Hey, good day, everyone, and welcome to the Inverted Orthodoxy Podcast. I am Blake, and I'm here with Kyle and Doug. And as much as you may not know as the listeners, we are excited to be back in this room because we've had some holidays and done some other things, but we are looking forward to taking you through the twists and turns of our faith and hopefully answering all the questions that you send in and do that well. So
here on a 399th episode.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
400 is next week.
I feel like, just to totally change the subject, people, unless this is their first podcast, had an idea that we were in and out the last few weeks. But yes, it is wonderful to be back. Yeah. I've actually, the last couple of days, been looking forward to getting back at her.
Totally.
And I was thinking, oh, man, we're getting close to 400. I didn't realize we were at 399. That's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I was like, we're getting close to 400 because you and I were talking about that a while ago.
Yeah.
And thinking, we'll probably have quite a bit of AER.
Yes, we have a lot.
I'm curious, just all of a sudden, just off the top of my head, what episode I started in. You guys have done all 400, basically, unless holidays or whatever else, but you've been here since the start. I don't know when I started, but...
I thought you were with us on the 200.
I was definitely here on 200.
Yeah, so
I've done over half.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Rookie.
Yeah. Because I remember doing the 200. For the 200, we gave away some $20 gift cards.
That's right, yeah.
For the 300, we gave away a few $30 gift cards, which I remember still arguing with Doug. He's like, that doesn't even make sense. I'm like, it's like a part of 300. Anyways, but
so is 4278 a part of 300.
it's true.
You want to start that debate again?
There's some scheming that has been happening, so you will want to tune in to episode 400 that I have been planning and working through, that I'm just going to drop on that episode that I don't think everybody's even aware of in this room. So we're gonna be dropping some stuff. So tune in next week.
I feel like most of us in this room are in the know. I feel like there's just one person who's not.
Yeah. Hey.
That's all.
It's you, Blake.
I was going to say. What, did you guys discuss this before episode 200? Or?
Oh man! So
We got some special things planned.
yeah, we got some special things planned.
Cool. I'm excited.
Well, Kyle did most of the work.
Oh, good.
Keelan also did some work. Yes.
Keelan did a lot of the work.
But we're excited.
Stay tuned next
We're
week.
excited for next week.
We try to drop the episode by 1 or 2 o'clock on Wednesdays, so you can check your feeds then, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, considering that we recorded a few episodes and then went away on holidays and stuff, and they were released, we have some AER.
Time for accusations, explanations, and recantations.
Right on. So first one today says, what does it mean to be conditionalist? We have used that phrase or that word on this podcast.
Just to acknowledge, these first 2 AER are back on throwing me in hey, Kyle.
I'm going to let Kyle answer this one because that's how he would define himself.
So we have talked, and even on the feed of this channel, wherever you're finding it, we did a long-form teaching on hell. So there are 3 generally held orthodox positions on how to understand hell. So there's the most popular of our modern day, which is the eternal conscious torment. There's on the far other side, the ultimate redemption.
Most popular among evangelicals.
Yeah. Well, it would be also the Catholic view.
I guess,
for the most predominant one. So it would be the most widely held view within modern Christianity.
Sure.
And then there's the ultimate redemptionist view, not to be confused with a light universalism, but a really serious view to be held and to be considered. Again, this is summing quickly. You can go see that long-form teaching on hell. And then the one I would say in between that I hold is the conditionalist perspective. This is the assumption that human eternality is not something we get from the Bible. A human does not live forever inherently, but this is a gift that we are given. For the wages of sin is death, but the free gift of God is eternal life. This is something we are given through relationship with Jesus. You can go to Genesis chapter 3, where Adam and Eve sin, and God says, all right, we need to get them out of the garden, lest now that they've eaten of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they also then go to eat of the tree of life and live in this state forever. There are many verses that sum this up. I could reference more of them, or I actually have a document that I've written at one point I could probably link in this episode.
Well, John 3:16.
Yep. Yeah.
Like a verse we spout all the time
Yeah.
that we don't even think about what it says
Yep.
that actually supports a conditionalist view.
Totally. And so there's tons of support for this, but the underlying effect is that humans are not inherently immortal. Only God is immortal. And so for us to live eternally with God is a gift he grants to those who follow and to choose to give their allegiance to him. Whereas in a hell scenario, that will not last forever. And so hell is real and takes place, and there's a judgment that leads to that, but it is not eternal for those that are sent there or choose to go there, I should more accurately say. And instead the other term for conditionalism is annihilationism, though I don't like that term because it makes God the one who applies that versus a ending of a human life that has chosen not to come and receive eternal life from him. And so that would be the view of a conditionalist.
The only thing I would say is that ultimate redemption is not universalism light. It is
no, ultimate universalism is a lighter version, as in it.
I consider ultimate redemption like a version of universalism.
Yes,
but a version of universalism that does not discount hell.
That's what I was trying to, I guess, point towards. I feel like a general floofy universalism of we're all going to go to heaven. It doesn't take seriously a lot of the difficult parts of Scripture that need to be wrestled with, and the clear depiction of a hell and a judgment and all those pieces, versus ultimate redemption really does and takes Scripture very seriously, not just a hopeful ideal. I don't know if I've recounted the line of N.T. Wright's I came across again recently, and I've just been loving it. I brought it up probably 20 times, where Wright states, "I'm not a universalist, but God might be." Yes. I love that line so much.
Speaking of things going to heaven, our next AER.
This is true. Nice little.
How's that for
transition.
a segue?
Yeah, that's good.
We used to work really hard on those. So.
Well, it was just sitting there staring me in the face. I couldn't ignore it.
Totally. All right. So it says during your discussion about dogs going to heaven, Kyle said that there was no death in the Garden of Eden. I had never heard this or thought about it before, and as a biology teacher, it raises so many questions for me, so I'm sending them here. Part 1. Did God create microbes, bacteria, viruses, fungi, that aren't mentioned in Genesis 1, which I assumed was because the people writing it couldn't see them and didn't know about them, along with it being more poetic than literal. But I would assume God still created them. So then where were their decomposing bacteria and fungi in Eden? And what did they decompose or get nutrients from? If there was no dead material to break down?
Should we break these into sections, or do you want to read the whole thing in entirety to begin?
I haven't read them all, so you tell me.
Break it down. We'll just go with one.
Can I, just before you jump in to start, again, Kyle, heretic.
I know, right?
So I just wanted to call him a heretic. That's all. You can
I'm going to jump in before you go on this one, because I had this discussion at home after our podcast at our dinner table.
Okay.
And our kids had no answers. I don't think you're going to get better answers than we get right here from my table discussion.
Right.
But yeah, everybody was just like, what? No one had thought about that before, including myself. So I'm with this biology teacher. Yeah, I'd never thought of this.
Well, to give some clarity, I was trying to restate the general position held. I do not hold that there was no death in Eden.
Okay.
I hold that there was.
heretic.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Heretic.
And there had to have been for exactly these kind of questions. So I was saying, and I believe, Doug, you kind of helped reiterate that for me, where you're saying I was applying that consistently as a conditionalist. And that's where that first one came from, that I'm consistent in that, where there was no, I believe there was death. Anybody who believes there was no death, which is the generally held position for anybody who holds a 7-day creation view, has to hold that.
Yes.
So I was trying to restate that and be generous and fair, not make a straw man out of that view. But to hold an evolutionary perspective and a conditionalist one, as I do both of those, death is a necessary condition before the fall. We have to have it for the environment to function as it does. You, Blake, being involved in agricultural stuff, like we need even take the changing of seasons.
Yeah.
We need the leaves to fall for the tree not to be broken and shredded over winter as the extra weight and all the systems that happen in the winter season to then come and bring new life in the spring. Those are necessary conditions.
Yeah, but I don't think there was snow in Eden. In fact, I won't go on the record as saying that is my personal opinion because of my thinking the fall led to winter. I'm sure of that.
So let's even take that crazy idea for a moment and assume the world functions entirely different. But let's say Eden is in the Middle East somewhere. We know there were fruit trees there.
Yeah.
And for any plant to create fruit, there is a bud that then bears the fruit. And in order for that fruit to come in place of the bud, my apple trees are starting to drop all their apples. In the spring, there were flowers. Those petals had to fall off and die for those apples to come forward. Mm-hmm. So even in a continuously producing fruit cycle, there is still a necessary function of death. Our bodies, if they weren't killing the cells off, we'd all be riddled with cancer, like from early points of our life. We need this for our bodies to happen. The decomposing of us eating food and ejecting something necessitate death.
Okay. So then the differing views.
Yep.
If I was to hold a 7-day creationist view
Yep.
and want to debate you,
Yep.
then I would just say God's God. So
Correct.
after 7 days, which is what we think, you have to have that view. You have to allow God to be God to have a 7-day view anyways, right? That when they dismissed or when God said Adam and Eve out of the garden, you get the angel there with the flashing sword.
Well, that doesn't happen on day 7.
No, but when it happens at the fall, then the whole world changes. The ecosystem, everything. That's what you'd have to accept that.
Lions were eating grass before then because there was no death. All those things have to be assumed for death to come in at the fall in its entirety, down to the cellular level.
Right.
And we need tons of death to happen. Like soil is decomposing material.
I'm hearing you. This is a discussion we had at the kitchen table, and I'm sure same thing with this person asking the question, and probably lots of listeners, if you started to dive into that, went, hang on.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot here.
So
right?
I believe the necessity and the onus for creating an argument actually is on the 7-day view to explain how the world could work without those things.
I would like to just reiterate your position and what you said on that previous podcast.
Yeah.
You were saying if you hold a 7-day literalist view.
Yes.
I just want people to be clear about that. You did say that there was no death in the garden, but in the context, if you are a 7-day literal creation person, then there was no death.
Correct.
Death came when they ate of the fruit.
Yeah.
Now, you could argue how long did they live in the garden? And there's no answer to that.
Nope.
But I just want to make it clear that, I called you a heretic twice already today, and I'll probably do it again. But in this case, that was not what you were arguing. You were providing context for a different point of view than the one you actually hold.
Yep. I try to be generous in my opinions to the opposite sides. And so I was trying to not make a straw man out of the 7-day, but arguing like this is a consistent piece you have to hold and wrestle with. If you're going to hold that whole thing, this is one of the things you deal with. Versus me
that's not a conflict to me at all. My conflict lately with my 7-day literalism, because I like that. Like I'm just personally again saying, for me, I like God being that magnificent that He did it in 7 days, and then now you've added to that for me in this last couple of weeks. Going that He changed the whole thing. Yeah. I don't know how that works theologically. But the conflict I'm having is that I'm really into all the blurry creature stuff, and I like the giants, and I like all the prehistory, and I'm like, that doesn't work. So that's where my conflict lies. I'm good with 7 days. So.
It wouldn't be that God changed everything. It would be that sin changed everything.
True. Yeah.
And so I just want to be clear on that point of view that the literal 7-day creationist view would not say God changed things.
Right.
Sin entered, and that's Romans 8. Right? That all of creation is under the weight of sin.
Moaning
and the effect
groaning,
of sin and groaning. Yeah. And so I just want to make it clear. We're not saying that God did it. We're saying, well, we're not saying any of that. But that 7-day literalist view would say sin did all of this.
Yeah. So, no, that's a position you would have to wrestle through if you are a 7-day creationist, which I am not. So I get to hold.
Well, and I can understand that, Kyle. I appreciate that. I do think you're radical sometimes, but but no, I appreciate you challenging that and going, yes, like we now have, even as this, questioner has or said, like they couldn't see cellular stuff before, right? So that hasn't been, something that they'd be aware of or have that position. But as the world just gets more and more, as God allows us to know more or reveals more, however that works, we have some serious questions, right, about how it began. Yeah. I'm okay with those questions. I've said it on this podcast, and I will again. I'm okay with that. Like, I don't think we're going to know until I've said on this podcast. We get to heaven, and he's got his home videos, and we can sit and watch them, right? But
totally.
But that's it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, then part 2.
Sorry, I was just going to say, that is a question that the literal 7-day believers have to answer and wrestle with.
Yep.
A few years ago, there's I don't watch it anymore, but there's a YouTube channel that I used to watch and then send Kyle videos to make him angry. And there was one video that I was like, look, I sent it to Kyle and said, look, you actually are a heretic because it's very fundamentalist 7-day creation and you're not allowed to have a different view. Yep. And his point was sin didn't enter the world until Adam and Eve ate the fruit somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago. Therefore, dinosaurs didn't exist, and those fossils are all some sort of conspiracy manipulated thing. And if you don't believe in a literal 7th-day creation, you're not a Christian.
Yep.
That was the end of the argument. That, and I was like, wow. See? I can finally call Kyle well, not finally. I've done it 100 times, but I can again call Kyle a heretic. So we're
on episode 399.
Okay, more than
one every third episode or a fourth episode. I don't know. I think you're...
So yes, it is a problem, and I do think it speaks to in this first part of the question that we miss the entire purpose of the Genesis story. It is not here's how God created the world. It's here's how we ended up where we are. And like I believe C.S. Lewis said, all myth is true, some of it is fact. Like we don't have to accept the facts of the Garden of Eden to understand the truth inherent in the myth of the Garden of Eden. Because it's not history in the sense of the same way of...
It's not documentary history.
In the same way of, yes, like Abraham Lincoln. It is a story. And I think we do such a disservice to these passages that in the last number of years, I have grown to love more and more and more. The early Genesis 1 to 4 chapters and the amount of truth that is in them about who God is, how God made us, who we are, both as people created in the image of God and sinners. The struggle for this whole conversation comes from God in Genesis 2 saying, the day you eat of the tree, you will surely die. And I actually talked about this in my sermon on Sunday because I was talking about sin. And I was talking about how, like, I've seen 2 different takes to that. One is God lied to them. And I've seen cynical people who don't believe the Bible, who are like, God was lying. They didn't die. The serpent was telling the truth. And God was trying to hold them down. And the serpent liberated them. And most Christians wouldn't say that anything like that. They don't believe that cynical view of God. But the other view that I have heard many times is like, they ate and God was so merciful that he just like immediately started being merciful to them. And that's why they didn't die and he made them clothes and just look at how merciful God is. The problem with that view is God didn't say the day you eat of it, I will kill you. He said the day you eat it, you will die. And we read the story and we're like, they didn't die. And I think part of the purpose of that story that we're supposed to read and reflect on is to come to the place where we say that sin that I don't think is killing me is killing me.
Yeah.
They did die that day. There's a change in their relationship with each other. There's a change in their relationship with God. There's a change in their own soul with their relationship with themselves.
Yep.
There was all kinds of death that happened there. But because they didn't stop breathing, one of the things that you see in Scripture over and over and over is that God speaks and people don't really understand what he's saying. Mm-hmm. And this is one of those parts where God speaks and we still don't understand what he's saying if we don't take time to realize it.
Yeah.
It was not about like that you will eat of this fruit and you will drop dead before the sun goes down.
Yeah.
It's that sin kills, even though Adam and Eve believed the lie and didn't think it would do them any harm. And we, like Adam and Eve, believe that same lie. And we don't think sin will kill us.
Yeah.
It is a poetic story about the reality of the devastation of sin.
Yeah.
And as long as we make it about Adam and Eve stopping breathing or not stopping breathing, we are missing the point and we're missing how that story is relevant to us.
So in your view then, Kyle, and liking what Doug is saying there, is there, I haven't read the story in a bit, so I don't know like the literal words, but God tells them they will die if they eat of the tree of knowledge, right?
Yep.
Is that just human death then? Like you would consider that there was already all this death happening because that's how the ecosystem has to work, right? That we need death to reproduce and all the rest.
Yeah.
But there's no human death until that point. Can we make that separation? Is that a theological true statement or no?
I think the bigger point actually of argument, just to bring in, I know, Doug, you were mentioning the Genesis 3 part or warning there. I think the bigger crux of the argument for the 7-day view is actually in Romans 5, when Paul argues, just as death entered through one man, so all will be saved in Christ. And so they view death, period, comes in through Adam in that moment, comes into the whole of the universe. I think that's where the bigger landing of the argument comes. But I think, one, the same people who would use that verse to show death came in through one man will not take seriously the later part where all will be saved through Christ that Paul lies out and apply that all as universally to the second part.
Yeah.
So they can see some narrowing on the first part than if they have to have it on the second.
Right.
And so I would go back to Genesis 3 where God is dealing with the shrapnel that's being thrown into his good creation through Adam and Eve. His concern is around their eternal state, where he says, again, because they've eaten the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we need to kick them out of the garden so that they won't live forever. I believe it's right there, our indication of this is a human condition, and the access to eternally living is only through relationship with the tree of life, which is provided by our good God, which beautifully comes to the other bookend of our scripture. We've got in Revelation, the final picture, humanity is brought back into the kingdom of God. The tree of life is placed in the center of the whole of heaven descended to earth, and humans can come and again eat of that tree.
Yeah.
So our welcome, and that tree is an image there of Jesus.
Yeah.
We come and we receive from the tree of life because of our relationship with our good God. So and when Genesis has the same story and same narrative there, humans' eternal state, our reception of life itself comes with our relationship to God. So to cut ourselves off from that was a gift given to humanity. The assumption then in the pairing of all these statements, Adam and Eve were permitted to eat of the tree of life and not of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But by cutting themselves off from one, they cut themselves off from the other. So again, that was a gift given to humanity to live in good relationship with God and to receive life from him. So I believe it right there just indicates this is something clearly for just humans, a gift of life continuously being sustained, and the opposite, like even when God warns them, if you eat of the tree, you'll surely die. They're like, what's that?
Right.
There's clearly this understanding of death, depending on your view of, are there other humans outside of the garden?
Right.
That's a whole other conversation that we can have.
Yeah.
But it's not a concept that seems foreign or confusing to them, even in that moment. Now, obviously, we don't have the whole of the story.
Yeah.
But when God gives them a warning, Blake, if you don't do this, I'm going to take away your coffee. You know what that means.
Yeah.
For there to be an implication there. So I believe it's something that, yes, they were familiar with.
Well, I think the other part of it is we always struggle when it comes to the Adam and Eve story with the making it history. right?
Yeah.
And even as you're talking, you're talking in the context of us wrestling through with the making of it as history instead of the looking at it as a story.
Yeah.
And I think that's where some of the struggle comes, is we have a hard time reconciling the fact that this might not be history.
There may not be a videotape of it.
You know what I mean? And then
I'm very disappointed.
Well, and then I don't think that there is. But we always come back to, instead of seeing Adam and Eve figuratively as where sin started, we see them historically as where sin started.
Yeah.
And that always leads into these unanswerable questions versus when you go and you watch a movie and you see characters, you don't try to work those characters into real life. You recognize this is a story that's telling a story, and I can let those characters exist in the confines of that story. And from that story, if there's truth, if there's something that I can take, I will take it. And the point of the Adam and Eve story is not history. I don't believe it is. It is a story that was, I think, first told by Moses to the people of Israel as they come out of Egypt, wrestling with their identity of who are we? We are a nation that spent 400 years as slaves. How does that impact your psyche? How does that impact your identity? How do you have any sort of idea of being this special called people of God? And this story that Moses shares of here's how we got to here is to help them learn their identity.
I like John Walton's language of Adam and Eve are archetypes, which leaves them to have possibly been real or to not. But the whole story doesn't depend on the historicity of that, right? And the meaning is just as real if they were real characters or not. But we pull much truth from it either way.
Exactly. But I just think when we do try to make them historical, we run into all these problems.
Because we don't have answers. Like there's no fill in the blanks, right? Like it's so you're trying to pin down God or Moses or whoever told the story or anything, and say, well, literally it says this word for word. But again, is that the way it was? Like if it is history, did it actually happen that way? And if it is history and it happened that way, and that is the literal phrase, we don't get all the other phrases around it. We don't get Adam and Eve saying, what's death or whatever. Like there's so much that's not there that makes it impossible for us to, say, I guess you can still believe it's history if you want to, but you just don't have the fill in the blanks. Like there's so much mystery around it. Wasn't it Galileo when he was thrown in jail because he said the earth was round, right? And all the Christians were in uproar at that time. But he said the Bible doesn't show us how the earth goes. It shows us how to get, or it doesn't show us how the heavens go. It shows us how to go to heaven. And I don't know if that's the exact phrase. I know I got it written down in one of my Bibles because some preacher said it at one point, and I was like, that's exactly it. The whole story, as you're saying, is to reveal who God is and how we can restore that relationship with him. It's not about how the world was made. Like that. That's the afterthought or the second portion of it, right?
As John Walton, I give him all the credit for, he also is explaining very clearly how the Genesis 1 and 2, well, really 1 through 11, are actually specifically interacting with the other creation myths and of its time.
Totally.
All of them. And how deeply it's trying to say, no, who humanity is and who the God who created us is far different than we think or imagine. And so there's deep ties through every word of those first 11 chapters that are the cultural ethos of its time responding to the revelation of who God is. Or that are much deeper than we like to think or imagine. And Genesis is, like the rest of the Bible, is not a science textbook. It's something much greater.
Well, I think of, when you talk about that a little later, is the Noah story. And the Bema podcast where they talk about the Noah story. And Moses retelling the Noah story. Comparing to the Chaldean flood story, where the Israelites, if they trace their lineage comes from Abraham of the Chaldeans. And so, like on the Bema podcast, they talk about how the Genesis story is different than the Chaldean story, But you have this narrative that could have been passed down for thousands of years, hundreds of years, all through the slavery time, that would have been the Chaldean story. That was very different and showed a very different view of God than the one that Moses tells.
Right. Yeah.
And that is Moses helping again this freshly liberated people to understand the bigger picture of who they are.
Yeah.
I think so much as I get older and hopefully wiser, but just maybe age. Like I read the Bible now, and there's so many times, and maybe the Bema podcast was good for that, like allowing to ask questions, but just going like, whoa, there's way more to this story than I read before. Like we just did with the young adults group, kind of walk through Moses liberating the people or taking them out of Egypt. But I just like, I go back in my head a few times to going 400 years of slavery. Like they know nothing except what Egypt has allowed them to know, right? Or has taught them, or has said, this is what it is. Like, I just, so often I've been hard on them as they walk around in the desert. They make these foolish decisions, or they, don't follow this God who seems to be literally right in front of them. And yet I go, they wouldn't. Like they would not know, they wouldn't understand like so much. And I've read that story, probably 100 times or more in my lifetime, and never even considered the impact of 400 years of slavery. Right. So they just say,
and the Egyptian gods.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Like so you would have on the one hand this narrative of who you are as the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But how much of that do you view through the lens of the Egyptian gods that you live in that land and they're everywhere, right? All of Egypt at this time is got gods and idols and everything everywhere. So, and we can't discount that the story that we hear, we see through our paradigm. And so there needs to be, even though maybe you know the story, letting that story reshape your paradigm in such a profound way. And we need it. We grew up in the church and we need it.
Yes.
Can you imagine 400 years in Egypt?
Yeah.
Let alone as a subjective people, like whatever God did give us, he must not like us and is subsequent to the Egyptian ones because they win and they're all right. Like all those stories.
Oh yeah.
To speak of, no, our God's greater. Our God is above them, even if we don't see it. Like,
well, and how much fear do you
identity
have?
stuff.
The Egyptians and their God treat you horribly. Well, now this new God, who we've heard stories of from hundreds of years before, is clearly greater. But you have been conditioned as a subjected, enslaved people to live in fear of everything. Like, you're not going out to Mount Sinai. Like, it's understandable that they're like, Moses, you go up the mountain, we're staying here. Right? And God's call for them to be priests. It's understandable they're terrified. Because they would trust no one.
Yeah. Good reason to. Well,
we have two more parts here.
I was going to say, we spent literally 35 minutes on part 1.
No, because we did the conditionalist question.
Okay, so we did conditionalist.
I feel like the second part today is we're going to.
But we should read it just to acknowledge it.
All right. It says, how can there be death in Eden?
No death,
in Eden if Adam and Eve had to eat. They presumably could eat fruit from other trees. Would they not be killing that part of the plant or in order to eat? If they had and animals didn't eat at all, the fruit produced by every plant, the fruit has to die in order for the seeds inside to be able to grow. How could life exist without death? The cycling of matter is essential to all life. How would this happen without death?
Preach.
No, my answer is God. All right, part 3.
I'm in full agreement with this person.
I am not. Part 3 says, or does none of this matter because God knew they would sin and therefore death would be inevitable if there was a lamb slain on the throne before the beginning of time?
Well, maybe God created them on the 6th day. They all had a long nap on the 7th. And then first thing on the first day of the next week, the serpent showed up and was like, Eve, come on.
So nobody had eaten yet.
That's right. That's why she was so hungry.
That's why she ate that one tree. I got to pick from one. Oh, gosh.
I appreciate and I see and agree with all of the things, and I think we should rethink death. I do think we in the 21st century have such a different view of death, and such a from the way the Bible talks about death, from the way Jesus talks about death, and from even God's view of death as revealed in Scripture. We only think of death as that moment when I stop breathing, and death is all around us all the time, and we constantly embrace and choose death instead of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea of human immortality is not one that is given to us through the Old or the New Testament. It's one that has come to us culturally through Plato and his thinking and Greco kind of philosophy, and then brought into both Jewish and Christian thought, and then applied in reverse back to these kind of passages.
And brought into Jewish thinking late after a lot of the Old Testament Hebrew Bible was written.
Yeah. And so that assumption is not there from the beginning. And even there's language around fall that is different in different Christian tradition and Jewish tradition than how we think of it. And so this is an imported idea that we have wrestled with in both Jewish and Christian thinking for a long time in different ways than what most, I would assume, of our listeners have been raised to assume around it. Big shout out. I've learned a lot through an organization called Biologos. You can access their website. Francis Collins, who is the head of the Human Genome Project, big part of the even U.S. health and science system right now, is a major contributor there, as well as John Walton and others. So if you're interested, check out their awesome work.
All right. This next question is good too. Back to our dogs going to heaven.
Or not.
I said I was listening to the podcast from last week about dogs going to heaven. I remember at the church that I worked at, they had someone come up to them and ask the pastors to do a funeral for their pet. I can't remember if it was cat or dog. We all found it funny, but thinking about it now, the people were probably hurt when the pastor said no. Would you guys perform a funeral for a person's
pet?
For a person's pet. Just thinking that if you say no, how would you back it up?
I've never been asked to do a funeral for a pet, but I have been asked and invited into times of grieving when families were grieving over pets. Mm-hmm. And I have been asked to go and to minister in those times and to pray in those times. And I've actually been quite honored to be invited into that. Yeah. The older I get, the longer I do this job, the more I realize the beautiful privilege it is to be invited into the monumental moments of someone's life.
Yeah.
It is an honor that someone, when they're going through the deepest of valleys, calls you. Mm-hmm. And so I go and I do my best to bring comfort. Yeah. Whatever my view of that, whether I think their dog went to heaven or not, I don't know. But I can go and I can try to bring the comfort of God into that situation. And I've done it, and I was happy to do it.
Yeah. I would say, I'm just thinking like on my toes here, I think there'd be a difference between doing a graveside and doing a funeral. Like, to me, that a funeral's in a church. Like, so they're going to come in, bring the casket in, or bring the ashes. We're going to sing some songs. We're going to sit down. We're going to, tell stories about the person. That's a funeral. A graveside service is just kind of, letting people grieve around a grave and maybe singing some few words, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Right. I'd probably, at just like thinking off the top of my head right now with not giving it much thought, I could do a graveside service for a pet.
Right.
I don't know if I could do a funeral.
Right.
And probably keep a straight face. That's the problem I would have there.
I think that you would just I would just focus on the grief that people are feeling.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's where I would land.
Yeah, without distinguishing terms too much, I wasn't imagining somebody would want the formality of like a full church service and all those pieces. I was imagining, the burying your dog in the backfield or something along those lines.
Totally.
That's my assumption. Like Doug was saying, I would probably just want to join with somebody in the grief. I think I would absolutely say yes with that. I don't think I would perpetuate any ideas I didn't believe in. I don't think I'd be out there. Everybody has seen on the internet now my views of probably where animals don't go. But I wouldn't try to lie to them. But I do think there's a God who cares deeply about us and our grief and our sorrow, that could absolutely be leaned into and to be talked about. Because, we have a God who weeps with us and cares about his good creation, including our pets.
Yeah, I think of Corinthians where Paul talks about you were comforted by God so you can comfort others.
Yep.
I'm very proudly a son of a rancher and farmer. And I think I just have such a different view of like animals and pets.
Oh, yeah.
So I do have to work on my being compassionate and feeling for those who have different views of pets and animals than I do.
I have no pets, and I have no desire to ever have a pet. No, there's not a single part of me that, like, so from that, I'm like, I wouldn't be able to, like, be in, like, a state of, I understand the pain you're feeling. Mm-hmm. It's just not something I've ever really longed for. But I do think we can meet people in their grief.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you. All right, challenge accepted.
We got 2 more ARs. We might actually make it through all these, guys.
All right, the next one says, I demand a recantation. This is at you, Doug. Doug,
That's
you
fine.
mentioned...
I stand by what I said.
You don't even know the question yet.
I read it.
Doug, you mentioned in a podcast, I can't remember which one, that people don't really click on the social media buttons on a website. Well, guess what? I did. Double guess what? Some of them don't work. Sadness. Your YouTube took me directly to a Squarespace YouTube channel. Is this how you guys generate revenue? Laugh out loud. And your Facebook link is broken. Sorry for giving you more work, Kyle. Just assuming it's more work for Kyle, as he is the most techie. And sarcasm.
Okay. First of all, I don't know who sent this in.
No.
So I'm just going to respond and say, the only reason you clicked those links was because I said you don't click links and no one clicks links. Admit it. You know that you never were going to click those links until I said it, and then you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to prove Doug wrong. So I don't need to recant anything, because before I said those words, you never clicked the social media link. Come on.
That is.
I thought you were like, I don't know who this is, so I'm just going to respond gently because I don't know if you're a first-time listener. No! That's so awesome. You, Doug, would click on links just to prove somebody wrong.
You would.
I don't know if the general population thinks
I would totally do that.
I know you would.
That's why I know this person did that for that reason. I know it. Admit it. Send in more AER and acknowledge the only reason you clicked that link was because I said you don't click
Could have
links.
started that rant by, hey, Doug, tell us what Enneagram number you are without telling us what Enneagram number you are, and you just showed us you're an 8, clearly. Oh, man.
With that said, the links don't work.
We built the website in preparation for our launch of the new rebranding of the podcast and anticipated building our own YouTube channel and Facebook page, which I believe we do have the Facebook page, but we made the later decision once we got things running to not fully separate Inverted Orthodoxy from our church. So we started just kind of sharing those mostly through our church page, though the Instagram page works, but we didn't have a separate YouTube page because the platform we use cannot yet, though they said they might be working on it, send a video to 2 different channels at the same time on YouTube. So we opted to leave it just on our Living Springs YouTube page, and then I never revisited that. So as of right now, once we got this question in, the plan is probably just to remove those buttons until we have an easier solution.
Because no one clicks on them anyway.
So we don't have that issue continuing to happen should anybody in the future want to click on those links. But for now, it's all on our Living Springs page.
All right. And last of our AR for today. Hello, pastors. In regards to the last podcast, a question was raised and discussed if Jesus would be on the side of the mega movement. A recent observation came to me from another podcast. Humans are praying, asking for God to be on their side, whether it be sports, wars, left, right, etc. The commentators pointed out the flaw with that in saying we ask God to be on our side instead of asking, are we on God's side? The approach changes everything and should be our foundation.
Absolutely.
Great response.
I think I'm not recommending that you watch this movie if you are going to get offended, because I'm not saying it's fully appropriate. But Bruce Almighty by Jim Carrey, like, he gets all of God's powers for an 8-block radius in Buffalo, but he gets all the prayer requests as well. They come in as emails, and he's sick of it. So he just answers yes to all, and the chaos that comes. Because, and I've had this happen with my daughter where, like, she's turned into quite the sports fan. So she will pray the night before the Florida Panthers or the Kansas City Chiefs are playing that they would win. And I always am like, you can pray whatever you want. I'm not telling you can't pray that. Yeah. But you realize there's another little girl somewhere on
the opposite
side. And God can't say yes to both of you. Yeah. So you just need to understand.
Sports be really boring with all the ties that he answers.
Or he could just do it with whoever prays the most.
That's true.
Whichever.
That's like on a Facebook poll. Like, if we can get all these prayers for this person, maybe God will answer. Yeah.
I 100% agree with and appreciate this. I always think of in the book of Joshua when he's before he takes Jericho. Yep. He is one night. I think I can't remember the details, but he encounters an angel. He encounters someone that turns out to be the angel of the Lord. He doesn't know, but I think he's out looking at Jericho being like, okay, how are we going to take this city? He has this encounter with this being who finds out, and the first thing he says when he sees this person, creature, thing, are you for us or for our enemies? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the angel's answer is neither. Mm-hmm. Which I think is one of the first leadership lessons Joshua's got to learn. Mm-hmm. God is not on your side. You are on God's side. Yeah. It says neither, but as commander of the armies of the Lord, I have now come. And we don't think about the reality of what that statement is saying and how we all are Joshua and we step into leadership. We're like, God, be on my side. But Jesus says, if you're not for me, you're against me. Like, he's the king. We are not. Agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
Right on. I think we have time for the first question of the day.
What?
What does Psalm chapter 68, verse 11 mean? It says this: the Lord announces the word, and the women who proclaim it are a mighty throng. The question says, were there women preaching that weren't later acknowledged? So I'm assuming as I'm saying that, you guys are pulling this up and having a look.
I am quickly pulling up Psalm 68. I'll begin. You can jump in after this, but I begin by saying we need to make sure that we remember the Psalms written hundreds of times before the birth of Christ and are speaking in that context, and that they are a book of prayers. Mm-hmm. And so women who are proclaiming something, that could be a prayer, that could be praise to God, that could be them talking to themselves. Mm-hmm. Like, you have all of these contexts of things being said in the Psalms. So it doesn't necessarily mean, and I've never really, I'm just looking at it quickly. So I just want to begin by we have to understand what the Psalms are. Mm-hmm. They're the book of prayer for the Jewish people that was written hundreds of years before Jesus, that was there to teach people how to pray. Mm-hmm. It was a prayer manual to help people learn how to pray that speaks to lots of different proclamations and speaking going on. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they were preaching.
Correct.
I'll start there.
Yeah. In my glancing through it, this really is a psalm of announcing God's victory and declaration of that. And yet it's around specifically the context of war, where it even begins, may God arise, may his enemies be scattered, his foes flee before him. May you blow them away like smoke as the wax melts before the fire. May the wicked perish before God. May the righteous be glad and rejoice before God, and may they be happy and joyful. So then the mention here of the women announcing, the Lord announces the word, and the women who proclaim it are a mighty throng. Kings and enemies flee in haste. The women at home divide the plunder. Even while you sleep among the sheep pens, the wings of my dove are sheathed with silver, the feathers with shining gold. When the Almighty scattered the kings in the land, he was a snow, like snow fallen on Mount Zalman. Snow, there. I'll just leave that there for you.
Just so you know.
Post-fall. There's this beautiful declaration, and just reading quickly, my assumption, the contrast here between women who proclaim a mighty throng, the kings and his army flee in haste. Speaking to the context of the ancient Near Eastern battles, for women to declare the victory over the kings is just a showing of God's great might.
Yes, that's power.
Right? Yeah. There is a huge victory for the women as the lowest of society to be declaring over the kings of another nation their God's victory. Yeah. There's a beautiful thing there. With that said, women hold a much higher view. Women are held in a much higher view than often we give ancient credit for in some ways. I was just listening to Sandra Richter on a podcast recently, and she was speaking about Deborah, a judge held within Israel's time during the time of the judges. She mentioned there's the prophet, the priest, the king, and then the judges are kind of this other thing that come in as well. But the prophet and the judge are the only two offices that are not handed through a line. These are ones that are evidenced by the work of God over you. Which is this beautiful story. So Deborah comes in and is a judge for like 40 years. Nobody debates with it because we can see God on the hand of God on her. And so I think in the same way, when these women are declaring, they are proclaiming God's work, not doing something on their own. And it's this beautiful indication that God is speaking through who he will choose to speak through, even the lowest. And so we can take lots of principles even into the New Testament from this kind of work. But there were women within Israel, but specifically because the offices and recognition of authority and all that, mostly through the prophets and through the judges, where we see Deborah specifically mentioned, where there were women used for proclamation of different types.
I'm going to say that we can probably assume that there were women who were preaching that weren't later acknowledged.
Yes.
And I'm going to not based on the fact that I'm aware of anything from that time period.
Yep.
I'm aware of what's happened in the last 100 years.
Yes.
And I'm aware that humans have not changed.
Yep.
And so if there are women who were not allowed to preach, or who, when they did step into a ministry because God was moving through their life in a powerful way, then they were forced to step aside or forced to become less than so that a man could take over. If that's happened in the last 100 years, which I know for a fact that it has,
Totally.
then it was certainly happening when this song was written.
It's been happening for all of human history.
But that's, yes,
Even
that's,
back to our archetyping of Genesis 3, right? Like the curse. And again, I think in some ways I'd love to find a new word for that, because curse makes it sound as though God's making this thing happen how he desires, versus the outworking of what Adam and Eve have now done is going to show itself and reveal itself.
yes, God's not saying, here's your punishment that I've decided.
Correct. But it's actually coming out of the decision that Adam and Eve have made. And in there, it's this brokenness of relationship even between Adam and Eve that already has shown itself, because Adam quickly tosses Eve under the bus when God is about to give this
woman.
this woman who you gave me.
Which is the death.
Correct,
That
right?
we don't see.
The brokenness all there. And then when God says about their relationship that she will desire her husband and he will lord his power over her. There's this brokenness that comes into, there's physical differences between males and females, and we can have that conversation. And males generally biologically are stronger than females. And we have chosen to use that throughout human history as a means of force instead of a means of protection, and use that for good of all, including for women, which is this brokenness of relational dynamic that is spoken of even in the curse there. When men and women were supposed to be equals, men used that and lorded it over females. And so that has happened in every sphere of humanity since that time. If it was a time. We've seen it reflected in our story. So there's a couple books I would recommend. The Making of Biblical Womanhood by Beth Allison Barr, and I can't remember this author's name, so I apologize for not remembering it. But The Gospel According to Eve was a really interesting book as well, bringing up the clear image of females within especially Christian practice that have been buried. And so she accessed a bunch of work that we won't otherwise often hear of, which I think would ring true even back to Jewish practice as well. But those are two that I would recommend on hearing the voices of females brought forward really well.
Cool. Well, I think that's probably it for today, guys.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us on this episode of Inverted Orthodoxy Podcast. This was episode 399. So stay tuned for next week. We hope you enjoyed the journey and found some thought-provoking things. And don't forget to submit questions. Visit our website,
Even with its broken links.
Yeah, so I was thinking that as
They weren't going to click them anyway, let's be honest.
Invertedorthodoxy.com, and you can give us a rate and review everywhere you listen to this podcast. See you guys later.
See ya.